Hi there. If you're listening for the first time, welcome. I'm Tiffany Fritchie. I am a licensed mental health counselor and my co-host,
Kirk Fasshauer, licensed clinical social worker.
And this is a time where Kirk and I get together and we dive in about topics related to mental health and ways to reduce the stigma. Kirk and I are both practitioners in the field, and we love getting together and talking, but we also love helping people better understand mental health and better understand how to support their community. So today we're discussing anxiety. So Kirk, tell me a little bit about why anxiety is such a big topic right now for kids and also for young adults.
Well, we've all went through a major event where, quite honestly, you couldn't see it, feel it, really touch it, and that was the COVID pandemic. And when something like that happened, and then we had this huge shutdown of a lot of things that were way beyond our control. So when we as humans start to feel that loss of control, our anxieties go up, and that creates a whole bunch of other conditions and things to be anxious about. You know, anxiety as a whole we're built to be anxious. We're built to have that mechanism within us, and that's how we've survived. It's called the fight, flight, or freeze response. And, you know, years ago we were traipsing through the woods and we came across a tiger, we had some choices to make. We could fight that tiger, right? And if we fought the tiger and won, we got a nice fur coat and then tiger meat for lunch. Or we fled the situation, and hopefully you can run faster than a four-legged tiger, if not faster than the buddy standing next to you. But then there's the freeze response, and we know the freeze response because it doesn't just happen to humans; it happens with the animal kingdom, because we have certain phrases like, they look like a deer in headlights. Well, yep, there you go. There's a freeze response right there. The deer is all of a sudden blinded by the lights and shocked by this oncoming object they don't even truly understand. And so they freeze. And so this happens a lot. And if you ever want to see the freeze response run amok, as I like to say, you have to look up fainting goats. These poor little goats this is what they were bred for. They were actually bred to be sacrificed for the herd. So if a predator was coming into the area, these goats just freeze up and they fall over. And so that as the herd is running away, you get the one sacrifice.
So with anxiety, I know it's one of those things where there is this sense of, typical anxiety that, we all kind of face, right? So there are going to be ups and downs during the day. Some, moments in our life are incredibly stressful, and there is that level of anxiety that is very common. And I think the hard part is identifying, well, where does this anxiety sort of cross a boundary or a threshold where it's not typical, it's not normal for me, it's not healthy for me, it's not benefiting me. And so when I think of what is even beneficial anxiety, I think, at night whenever I'm getting ready for bed, I set my alarm clock, right? Yeah. I make sure that I have enough time to get ready. If I've got a big report or if I've got, a big event coming up, I'm going to look over that email one more time. I'm going to proofread and then proofread again. So there is that level of nervousness of, I want to make sure I get this right. And that can be helpful. It helps you to, keep track of your speedometer so you're not speeding. It helps you make sure, you take a shower so your hygiene is good. But then there is a point where it becomes unhelpful and even unhealthy. And I think a lot of people who might be listening might wonder, if I'm monitoring myself, if I'm worried, is this typical anxiety? Is this unhelpful? Where do we see that line get crossed?
Right. And it's different for everybody. Mm-hmm. Certain folks have a tolerance level, if you will, different coping mechanisms, all of that stuff we can talk a little bit more about. But you're right. Anxiety is a normal response. I would hope that if a car is coming at you at 100 miles an hour, you have some anxiety, because that's the good kind of anxiety. It helps you to get out of the way. It helps you to do those things, those goals and directives you set for yourself. So kind of building off of what you talked about, let's say you as a student have an exam coming up. Well, it's okay to worry about the exam because that's going to motivate you to study. Where it starts to filter into not so healthy is where, okay, I've got to study, and you study, and you study again, and you study again, and you're like, I don't have enough, and it keeps you awake. You don't eat. So like you said, you set the clock to make sure you're up early in time. So that's a good motivator. Hey, let me set up the clock. Well, then it's like, the clock has stopped a couple of times. I'm not really sure. Let me check it again. Yeah. Okay, some more anxiety. And then next thing you know, you try to relax and sleep, but you're worried. Your mind doesn't shut off, and it keeps. So when it becomes excessive or even inappropriate worry, this clock has always worked, but I'm worried because the last clock I had 2 years ago stopped one time, and I missed the getting into class in time, and then therefore I failed the test, and so now you start to catastrophize the situation, and making it a lot worse than it could actually be. I mean, it's a test. You're going to fail it. Okay, you fail it or maybe you'll do really well. I mean, you pay attention in class and things like this, but The good anxiety moves you to make things happen. Anxiety doesn't go away. Okay, there's a level of anxiety with all of us. And you and I, Tiffani, we have anxiety. We had anxiety coming in here today. Let's talk about the topic of the day. Let's worry about this. Okay, did we get everything right? And even as we're talking now, we're probably feeling a little anxiety because it's like, is this just right? Are we getting the message across the way we hope? But that's what moves us to say, okay, let's check the boxes in our head about, okay, this is the area we're going to cover on this and stuff like that. So for anybody out there, anxiety can be a good thing. It does debilitate us, though, where it starts to become excessive in nature, where, like I said, you study, you overstudy, you overthink it.
Well, and I think it's a balance, right? So there's this level of emotional regulation where we can do hard things and we can be in stressful situations, but do we have the coping skills? Do we have the support systems? Even when there's pressure on one area, from these resources, there's also support in that area. And I think sometimes where we find that decline is where there's pressure on that one area and the pressure gets so heavy that there's no support system in place that keeps things balanced.
Right. So one of the things when it starts to hit home is especially as you're transitioning from home going to college, it's that separation. Folks start to worry about, hey, I'm going to be away from my parents now. I've got my own structure. But while that's exciting and thrilling, at the same time, it's daunting and scary because, now I'm the master of my own schedule. It's what I always wanted. And okay, now what do I do?
Right, and the balance is off.
So you try to get that. There might be specific things people become worried about, and there's kind of two levels. There might be specific things you're worried about, which are much more falls into the realms of phobias. For a lot of folks. Folks may have heard of phobias before: fear of heights, fear of clowns, fear of water, fear of, whatever. I mean, there's a long list we could go over about phobias. The social phobias are a big thing, especially when you're transitioning from home into college life, because one of the things we practice in high school, that social life, and we have a frame of reference from which to go off of, and then people go their separate ways, and now that social support that you once had may not be there. So when anxiety starts to flood a person, and when I mean flood, that the emotions are there and they become dysregulated a little bit, what happens is they start to pull back, maybe isolate, and so they appear shy. And intimidated by what's happening. And again, it's about change, It's about being socially accepted. I've got a new set of friends, and maybe the old bag of tricks that you had in high school are not working now in the semi-adult life of college. And then even further into adulthood, that bag of tricks may not be working. And so you've got to try to find different ways to do that. On top of that, you're going to a new place, trying anything new, taking that risk. It's not only a courageous act, but it's very anxiety provoking.
Well, and you're not alone if you have this. The CDC has stats out from 2016 to 19 that say, 5.8 million people ages 3 to 17 have a diagnosed anxiety disorder, right? More than that, possibly have symptoms and they're not diagnosed. I'm going into, the older ages, 6 to 17, the numbers are high. Early adulthood, it's a stressful time in and of itself. Adding in, anxiety and depression, it's hard to focus. And I think sometimes people are wondering, well, like, what does anxiety feel like? What does it look like? And I know that you've, expressed kind of, that really big fear about something that's not life-threatening. If there is a tiger, if there is a car, absolutely. That is a healthy reaction. But if there's not a tiger, if there's not a car, this very big reaction to something that's not life-threatening. And I think what's helpful is kind of understanding, that cognitive triangle that as therapists, we know very well, how your feelings influence your thoughts and how your thoughts influence your behavior. And so kind of digging into that, so some physical symptoms that we might feel, right? Other people on the outside looking in, they're not going to know, but you might have that rapid heartbeat. You might sweat. You might have trouble breathing. I can vividly remember, the first time I ever spoke in front of a class, I knew my heart was beating so fast that other people could hear, but just that overwhelming sense. I work primarily with children and teens, and what we find sometimes is for them, anxiety might come in stomach aches and nausea, dizziness, muscle tension. A common one is low energy, just feeling exhausted, right? Sometimes, shaking, jittery, all of these things. So then those are the physical symptoms. Moving into cognitive symptoms, we've talked about, worry, negative thoughts, and not just, I might fail this test. I might fail this test because I'm terrible. And if I fail this test, I'm going to fail the class, and then I'm going to get kicked out of school, and then I'm never going to have a job, and no one's going to want to be my friend, and no one will love me, and I'm going to die alone. And that spiral that can happen, and you don't even know you're in it because it's just so quickly moving and overwhelming. And so I know sometimes, it's hard to even know you're there. Sometimes I see trouble concentrating. Sometimes I see trouble staying focused. And so if, there is a test, if there is an assignment, staying focused on completing it can be really hard. And if you're having difficulty, that can create another spiral of, I can't do this and I can't stay focused and I'm going to fail. And that feeling of failure can really drive anxiety in an unhealthy way. So then moving from physical and cognitive thinking to behavioral, exactly what you just said, that, sometimes shyness, and that can present in avoidance, avoiding places, avoiding situations, avoiding the thing that they're supposed to do. It's not uncommon, that freeze of knowing that you have a test, of knowing that you have a project, and instead of doing it, sleeping, or instead of doing it, watching TV, and knowing while you're sitting there, I really should be doing something else, but you can't.
Right. And people have a different perception of what that freeze is. It is a lockup, but it's a lockup that can appear functional because I'm just avoiding work, or you're the lovely word procrastinate. That it's so locked up. So another real world example is what happened for me. I have terrible test anxiety. I get the knowledge down and all of this, but when you put me in front of a test, I start to lock up and I have the mental blocks. So it took me several years to even get my license because of the daunting test. And of course, you hear people going to take the state licensure exam and the horror stories that came from that just fed the anxiety beast that really debilitated me for the longest time. So at that point, it wasn't getting me what I wanted. My goal was to eventually get the license, and it took some time to eventually work on that particular anxiety. So it's not unusual. And when it locks you up from getting to the thing you want, that's where professional help comes into play. That's where you go out and you seek, because friends and family may not understand, and you may be embarrassed to even talk to them about that situation because what do you mean? You know this stuff, and they're being helpful, but at the same time, it does still feed that anxiety beast because it's saying, pick yourself up. You should be able to get over this. But there's that inner voice that's playing, and it seems to dominate your thought process.
Yeah.
So for my experience, I mean, was talking to a therapist. I didn't need medication, but sometimes people may need medication to help take the edge off so they can start to focus and come up with a plan. For me, it was talking through. It was the prep work for the test, and then for me, one of my coping mechanisms to reduce anxiety is certain forms of music. And I just remember for my prep for the state exam to be licensed, I listened to the soundtrack from Pan's Labyrinth. If you know that movie, it's a very good movie. Second of all, the soundtrack is phenomenal. And the one piece of music that really helped me get through it was the lullaby from Pan's Labyrinth. And it still runs in my head every so often, which is great because it's a comforting kind of sound. So that's one way people can start to help themselves is, okay, can I break this down? And again, you might need somebody to help guide you through this, a good friend or a therapist, somebody professional to reach out to, and sit there and break it down into smaller tasks. And sometimes that can get worse because you're looking at, well, it's so simple. I feel stupid. No, you're trying to break through this one thing that this quagmire that has locked you up. How do you chip away at it? There are ships that break through the ice in the North Pole and in the South Pole, to get to their destinations, and they chip away at it a little at a time. So it's a slow-moving process, but you're moving forward.
Yeah, and I think sometimes just that, how do I get started with moving forward? A couple of things to remember with anxiety, it's uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. It's uncomfortable, but we can do hard things if we know how to move forward. And so the symptoms of anxiety, as Kirk was talking about, fight, flight, or freeze, those are the fight or flight responses. And I think sometimes the first step in understanding, well, how do I move forward, is really starting at the beginning, understanding what is causing me to feel anxious. And that means labeling what we call your triggers. So what is kind of instigating this emotional response? And it's different for different people. In Kirk's example, that test, taking a test, the pressure of taking that test might be a trigger. For other people, it might be something different. It might be public speaking. It might be, meeting new friends. It might be being in a new place. It could be anything. And I think sitting down and being honest about what is causing me to feel anxiety. When I feel scared or nervous, what's around me? Am I worried about something that hasn't even happened yet? Maybe something in the future? How is my body responding to this? Because, your body keeps the score. Your body knows what is happening, even if your brain isn't quite there yet. And so another thing sometimes, especially, if you are very motivated academically, is wondering, do I take on things more than I can handle, or do I have unrealistic expectations of what I can accomplish? Am I worried that I won't be able to handle if something happens? So just being honest about those triggers, I think that's a good start. And then moving from there, some things you can't prevent, even if you were very prepared. So knowing which coping skills, so like Kirk mentioned, having the music or having something that works for you. So Kirk, just, for the good of maybe someone who's in a situation to where they're feeling some anxiety, not quite sure if it's crossing that threshold or not, what are some good tricks, I guess, to help someone regulate, in
Right.
those short moments?
Right. So I think it goes back to something you had just mentioned, Tiffany, and that is stop for a moment. Let's evaluate what's going on. Okay. Take stock of what's happening, and then take an observation of what's going on. It's called the stop method. So you're observing. Okay, what's going on with my body? My heart's racing. Okay, how can I calm that down? Breathe, deep breathing exercises. Have I eaten today? Because sometimes, our blood sugar gets off, and that creates its own anxiety.
Yeah.
There's a physical need going on there that now is triggering off the anxiety as well. And then, then proceed. Once you've made a mindful decision to go forward with something, go forward with it. Now, did I make the right decision? What if I make the bad decision? That's how we learn. We're going to be making some bad decisions. Now, hopefully, they're not life-threatening bad decisions, but they're decisions that, we trip, try to pick yourself up. Easier said than done. It hits hard when you have what is perceived as that major failure, and that's again part of the fear that comes from the anxiety. So, taking that moment to take that step back. What is it that's causing me this anxiety? Do I have control over it? I think you mentioned the word control, which is very important here. We sometimes get ourselves all worked up over things we have absolutely no control over whatsoever. And if we have control, then make the change. Make it work for you. For me, like I said, I had to stop, take stock. Okay, I do know this stuff. I do know the material. They're going to be some hard questions. I am not going to score 100%. That is not my goal. My goal is to pass. Okay, nobody's going to care about what the score is. They're going to care that I have the license. They're going to care that I have passed this test. That's really where it is. And even after you've taken the exam or taken that course, we're still learning. I mean, I've been in the field 35 plus years, and I'm still learning about this stuff, which is great. That's what I love about the work is we're dealing with people and how to engage in these kinds of relationships and work with stuff, talk with folks about anxiety disorders. And be careful, big warning here, be careful what you're watching on social media because we typically want to have a frame of reference of where am I normal? And if you're using that as your frame of reference, be careful. I'm not telling you not to watch that stuff. It's kind of fun to watch. I tend to binge watch occasionally myself.
Well, and I think just to kind of point, harder at that point, if you eat junk food, your body's going to feel icky, right? If you eat healthy food, your body's going to be fueled. You're fueling your mind with everything that you consume, with your mind. And so if you are constantly on social media, constantly comparing yourself to others, you're feeding yourself junk food.
Well, absolutely. And even more important is the fact that is the moment of their success that you're seeing. You don't see the build up to a lot of that. There are a few things that happen, boom, instantaneously. They've had to work towards that. People see me do public speaking and they think, "Oh my God, you do so wonderful." Well, that's years of practice. That's years of having done it. It's not that first time I went up there. I felt horrible. B, I stumbled all over the place and all over my words. And now it's just I've done it so often that it gets to a point where there are certain techniques and certain things that I've done and learned over the years with how I present to make it look effortless.
Well, and comparing someone's highlight reel to your daily low is always going to leave you feeling disappointed.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, so it's having those friends around you, family kind of reminding you of your successes because you do have those successes. And sometimes it is hard to hear when you're in that pit for the moment. But there are cheerleaders for your efforts and cheerleaders for your cause, and there will also be naysayers. That you're always going to have both.
Right.
And sometimes in those down moments, we hear the naysayers far more than we hear the cheerleaders. So gather your cheerleaders and have some fun with it,
So wrapping up, when we think about anxiety, it's a lot of things, but it is that overwhelming emotional response, in most cases, to something that is not life-threatening.
Correct.
Sometimes it is life-threatening. When it is, there's a different set of skills. But if you're not in crisis, if it's a non-life-threatening situation, really take stock in knowing you're not alone. There are resources there to support you. The first step is acknowledging that you're feeling that way.
Right.
And the second step is reaching out for help. And maybe the help is, eating lunch, reaching out to a friend. Maybe the help is reaching out to a professional who is trained in this particular thing. So locally, Peace River Center is a community mental health agency, and we would be glad to see how we can support you or someone you love. But Kirk, what about nationally? Where can someone reach out for support?
Well, they can tap into the new number, the 988 number, especially for those individuals who are on the more suicidal side, thoughts of death, that kind of side. But you can call 988, or you can call 211 to find out other local resources in your area that may be available to help you, such as we have Peace River Center, a community mental health organization that provides all sorts of supports for this kind of thing. You can even Google online for anxiety support groups. There are support groups out there that are very beneficial and help folks get through it because you're not alone. And that's what I love about the group movement is that you're able to go into a room and see, there's 12 other people that are feeling similar to me. And then they start sharing their stories and you hear, hey, I do that too. Mm-hmm. What did you do to get out of it? And some of those things may work for you, some of them may not. But again, it's testing out what works for you. Meditation. For me, it was the music that helped bring me there. It was just sort of a meditative process. Visualization or guided imagery is out there. Those are the things that help reduce some of the stress and anxiety you may experience through a lot of this. I know some students will listen to music while they study as the background, and there are studies out there that certain forms of music really help you to focus and retain some of that material. So all of that is really good stuff to have in your tool belt as you go forward. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for having this talk today. We hope you enjoyed our show, and if you did, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you have any struggles emotionally, please call us here in Central Florida at 863-519-3744. Or if you're hearing us on a national level, dial 988.